My mother-in-law looked at my daughter once and disowned us. I was still in my mesh underwear and hospital bracelet when my mother-in-law looked at my newborn daughter, pointed, and screamed that she wasn't my husband's child. We'd just gotten home from the hospital that afternoon. I remember the way the car seat felt too big for her, how my husband carried it in like it was made of glass. My boobs were leaking through a stained nursing tank. My stitches hurt with every step, but I was excited. His parents were waiting in our living room, his mom, his dad, his younger sister Hannah, ready to meet their first grandchild. I walked in holding Sarah, all 7 pounds of her, wrapped in a pink blanket. My husband beamed. "Mom, Dad, this is Sarah." His mom's face lit up for half a second. Then she froze. The room went weirdly still. She leaned in, squinting. Sarah's skin was that newborn color blotchy, slightly pink, still settling. But compared to my husband's warm brown skin and her own deeper brown, Sarah looked pale. She had my light complexion and a dusting of dark hair. My mother-in-law's eyes went wide. Then she jerked back like she'd been burned. "This is not my son's baby," she snapped. Everyone just blinked. I thought I'd misheard. My husband laughed nervously. "Mom, what?" "Of course she is." Her voice jumped an octave. "Don't lie to me. Look at her. She's white. She looks like them." She jabbed a finger in my direction like I was some stranger off the street. Sarah started fussing, picking up on the tension. I shifted her higher on my chest, trying to soothe her, my hands suddenly shaking. "She's 3 days old," I managed. "Babies change." "Don't you talk to me?" She shrieked in Hindi, words I didn't understand, but felt like slaps anyway. My husband flinched at some of them. I saw shame and fury flicker across his face. My father-in-law tried to put a hand on her arm. Bass, enough." She yanked away from him, eyes filling with angry tears. "You bring home some white girl, you marry her. I say, okay, I welcome her, and then this?" She pointed at Sarah again. "You think I'm stupid? You think I don't know what a mixed baby looks like?" My heart hammered in my chest. Sweat prickled under my hairline. 3 days postpartum, and I was being accused of cheating, of passing off another man's baby as my husband's, in my own living room. My husband stood up so fast the couch rocked. "Mom, stop. That's my daughter. That's our daughter. What is wrong with you?" "She is not yours," she screamed back. "I know my blood. This is not my blood." Sarah broke into a full newborn wail, high, panicked, desperate. The sound sliced through me. I bounced her, whispered, "It's okay, baby, it's okay." But my voice shook. I could barely breathe. My sister-in-law, Hannah, had tears in her eyes. "Ma, please," she whispered, embarrassed, but she didn't contradict her. My father-in-law muttered something in Hindi, low and angry. My mother-in-law fired back, louder. I caught only one English word, shame. My husband moved to stand between us, his body literally blocking his mother's line of sight to me and the baby. "You owe my wife an apology," he said, voice trembling. "You will not come into my house and call her a cheater." She stared at him like she didn't recognize him. Then she turned to her husband. "We are leaving. Come, Hannah, get up." They stood. No one touched the baby. No one said goodbye. At the doorway, she spat one last sentence at my husband in Hindi. He went rigid. Years later, I'd learn it translated roughly to, "If you raise another man's bastard, don't call me your mother." The door slammed behind them, and the whole house seemed to exhale. Sarah hiccuped in my arms, still crying. I realized I was too. The silence after they left rang louder than the screaming had. My husband sank onto the coffee table, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. I sat gingerly on the couch, every stitch pulling, my brain replaying the last 10 minutes on loop. "She thinks I cheated on you," I said, because I needed to hear it out loud to believe it. He looked up, eyes wet. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I hadn't even known I had expectations for that visit until they shattered. I'd pictured her crying happy tears, arguing with my mom about who got to hold the baby next, bringing homemade food and unsolicited advice. I'd wanted a grandma for Sarah, a loud, nosy, loving Indian grandma with bangles and spices and stories. Instead, I got accused of infidelity before my epidural had fully worn off. I stared at my husband. Do you believe her? Do you think?" He cut me off immediately. "No, absolutely not. I know this is my baby. I know you. I know the math. I know everything." His voice cracked on that last word. I can't believe she said that. To you. To us." He looked like someone had taken his childhood and smashed it on the floor. Torn between me and the woman who'd raised him, and hating that there was even a question. He reached for Sarah, and I handed her over, my arms suddenly heavy. She quieted almost instantly against his chest, her tiny hand curling into his shirt. He kissed her dark hair. "You're mine," he whispered. "You are mine." We sat like that for a long time. No TV, no phones, just the 3 of us in a house that suddenly felt unfamiliar. My brain kept snagging on stupid details. I should have changed into a nicer shirt. I should have taken more pictures in the hospital, when things still felt safe. I should have insisted we wait a week before visitors. I'd known my mother-in-law could be dramatic. She cried at commercials, yelled at cricket games, Once threw a sandal at a cockroach, and then cried because she felt bad killing it. But she'd never turned that intensity on me. Not like this. I'd thought we were close. She'd hugged me at our wedding and called me Beta daughter. She told everyone how proud she was, that her son had found such a good girl. She'd shown my Instagram to her friends back home, and now she thought I'd slept with someone else and tricked her son into raising their baby. My husband's phone buzzed on the coffee table. We both stared at it like it might explode. It was his dad. He didn't answer. The next few weeks were a blur of feeding schedules, raw nipples, and this dull ache in my chest that wasn't just from my milk coming in. My mother-in-law did not come back. My father-in-law and Hannah texted cautiously, "How is the baby? Do you need anything?" But there were no offers to visit, no, "Can we drop off food?" It was like they were afraid to cross her. And my mother-in-law made her condition very clear. She called my husband while he was on a grocery run. I could hear her through the car speaker when he answered. "I will not step foot in that house," she said, "until I know the truth." "What truth?" he asked, already exhausted. That baby is yours," she replied. "You do a DNA test, then we talk." I was sitting on the couch pumping, the flanging sound of the machine going whoosh, suck, whoosh, like background music to my humiliation. "Mom, this is insane," he said. "I know she's mine. I don't need a test." "Then why are you afraid?" she shot back. "If you are so sure, what is the problem? Unless you know something you're not telling me." I turned the pump off. The silence made her words louder. My husband glanced at me, torn. "I'm not doing that to my wife," he said. "She just gave birth. She is bleeding and tired and she is not family," his mother snapped. "You are my son. That is my grandchild, maybe. I have a right to know." She hung up on him when he refused to argue anymore. He sat there in the driver's seat, keys in his hand, not starting the car. When he came inside, his shoulders were slumped in a way I hadn't seen before. "She wants a paternity test," he said quietly. "Otherwise she won't come." I laughed, a short bitter sound. "Then I guess she won't come." He rubbed his face. "I told her no. I told her I trust you, that I don't need it. But she's not going to let this go." He hesitated. "Can we talk about it?" I stared at him. "About me proving I didn't cheat on you?" He flinched. "I know you didn't. I swear I do. This isn't about you. It's about her being crazy. It's about her calling our baby illegitimate," I said. "It's about her screaming at a 3-day-old. He sat beside me, careful of the pump parts. "I don't want to ask you to do this. I hate that I'm even saying this. But if we do the test, it shuts her up forever. For Sarah's sake, for our peace. She'll have to eat her words." There it was. The thing I'd been afraid of. Him asking me to clean up his mother's mess to keep the peace. My brain ping-ponged between anger and practicality. Life would be so much easier with family support. I'd pictured her babysitting, temple visits, the whole big Indian grandma experience. Was I really going to throw that away over a cheek swab? But then I'd see her face in my mind, twisted with disgust as she looked at my baby, and my stomach clenched. "I feel like she's asking me to put Sarah on the witness stand," I said. "Like she wants to see the lab report before she decides if she's going to love her." He swallowed. "I know. I hate it. But if we don't, she's going to poison everything from the sidelines. She already told some relatives she has doubts." The humiliation spread out wider. It wasn't just our living room anymore. It was WhatsApp chats, cousins, aunties, people I'd never meet shaking their heads over the white girl who trapped their boy. "I need time," I said. "I need to think." He nodded, but I could see the weight in his eyes. He wasn't doubting me. He was begging me to be the bigger person so he wouldn't lose his mother. To even understand how surreal all this was, you need to know what our relationship looked like before Sarah. When I met my husband, he was the only Indian guy in our small southern college town, or at least that's how it felt. I'm white, born and raised there. He was born in India, moved to the States as a kid, and had spent his entire adolescence being the brown kid in classrooms full of white faces. He'd told me stories early on, kids asking if he spoke Indian, teachers mispronouncing his name for years, adults making jokes about 7-Eleven and call centers. Little cuts that added up. He learned to laugh it off, to be the chill, funny Indian guy. But I could see how deep it went. "When I have kids," he told me on one of our early dates, "I don't want them to go through what I did. I don't want them to have a big target on their back because of their name, their lunch, whatever." He wasn't religious. His family was culturally Hindu, but by the time I met him, he was fully atheist, the kind who watched science documentaries for fun and rolled his eyes at horoscopes. He didn't fast for festivals, didn't go to temple regularly, only humored his parents on Diwali with a quick FaceTime and some firecrackers in the driveway. His mom, though, was the opposite temple, pujas, WhatsApp bhajans, the whole 9 yards. But she loved me. At least, I thought she did. She'd taught me how to make chai properly, laughed when I mispronounced Hindi words, bragged to her friends that her American bahu made excellent aloo gobi. When we told her we were getting married, she cried happy tears. She'd been worried he'd stay single forever, too picky or too focused on work. She told everyone how open-minded she was, how she didn't care that I wasn't Indian or Hindu, as long as I loved her son. Looking back, there were little cracks. She'd sigh sometimes when we talked about future kids and say, "At least give them Indian names, nah?" My husband would shrug and say we'd see. She'd get quiet when he joked about being an ex-Hindu. She once sent me a long article about keeping culture alive in mixed marriages. When we found out we were pregnant, we told her on FaceTime. She screamed and covered her mouth, then cried and said, "My first grandbaby." Over and over, she started knitting tiny sweaters. She asked if we'd do the naming ceremony, the mundane, the whole list of rituals. My husband put her off gently. "Mom, you know how I feel about all that religious stuff." She pursed her lips but didn't push too hard. "At least the name," she said. "A nice Indian first name. You can give your English name in the middle, but first name Indian, so people know she is ours." Later, alone, he told me, "I don't want our kid's resume thrown out because of their first name. You know how it is here." I did know, I'd seen it, and he'd lived it, so we picked Sarah. Simple, classic, easy to pronounce. We told his parents we'd chosen it. His mom's smile dimmed, just a little. "Very nice," she said. "Very American." We didn't do a baby shower in a temple. Didn't fly to India so some priest could whisper mantras over my belly. We didn't plan a naming ceremony. We planned a simple, secular life for our kid in a town that already saw my husband as other every time he walked into a gas station. I thought his mom accepted that. I thought we were on the same page. Love over rituals, relationships over rules. I didn't realize how much she'd been silently pinning on that baby until the day she saw her and saw nothing of herself. When the dust settled enough that I wasn't crying every hour on the hour, I did what any millennial does with a crisis. I wrote a long post on Reddit. I laid it all out. Our interracial marriage, my usually sweet mother-in-law, the blow-up in the living room, the demand for a paternity test. I even mentioned that I'd just had a white-looking baby with a very brown dad and a grandma who suddenly decided genetics only worked one way. I expected maybe a dozen comments. Instead, my phone blew up. People had opinions. Half the comments were some version of, "Just take the test. Who cares? Swab your cheeks, get the paper, wave it in her face. Then she has to shut up forever and you get family help back." The other half were like, "Absolutely not. You just pushed a whole human out of your body. You're bleeding. You don't owe anyone proof of your fidelity. If you do this, you're teaching her that if she screams loud enough, she gets what she wants." One comment stuck with me. A paternity test might be a good idea, but not for her, for your husband, to shut down rumors. But if you agree, you need major conditions. Written apology, admitting she was wrong, clear boundaries, she never gets to bring this up again or question your daughter's belonging. Another wrote, "Your baby is not evidence. She is not on trial. If your mother-in-law wants a relationship, she needs to act like a grandma, not a prosecutor." I screenshotted a bunch and showed them to my husband over cold pizza at 3 a.m., while Sarah dozed in a milk coma between us. He read in silence, scrolling, his face lit by the blue light. "They're right," he said finally. "I hate that I even asked you. I hate that my mom put us here." He rubbed his eyes. "But I also hate that my daughter might grow up hearing whispers that she's not really mine, that my mom might poison that well. So what do we do?" I asked. He exhaled. "We set terms. If we ever agree to a test, it's not because she demanded it. It's because we decided it protects Sarah from rumors. And if we do it, she apologizes. She never questions it again. She never ever talks to our daughter like she did today." It was the first time since that day that I felt a little less cornered. We weren't helpless. We could decide what we would and wouldn't tolerate. I realized something else, too. I couldn't control whether his mom loved Sarah, but I could control who got access to her. And nobody, no matter how many curries they'd fed me, or how many times they'd called me beta, was going to scream at my child and walk away consequence-free again. Over the next few days, my anger hardened into something sharper. I kept seeing myself standing there, in an adult diaper, bleeding and swollen and exhausted, while a woman I loved called my baby a stranger's. That image became my line in the sand. "I'm not doing the test for her," I told my husband one night. "If we ever do it, it'll be for you and for Sarah. But I'm not jumping because she shouted. I'm not letting her treat my daughter like a piece of evidence." He nodded, relief visible in the slump of his shoulders. "Okay, no test, at least not right now. I'll tell her. And I'm not going to be screamed at in my own house," I added. "Not in English, not in Hindi, not in interpretive dance. That's non-negotiable." He almost smiled at that. "Interpretive dance is off the table. Got it." We talked for hours about what boundaries actually looked like. It felt weird, drawing lines with people who'd once been so close. But once we started, it got clearer. "If she ever questions paternity again, that's it," I said. "We're done. I'm not going through that twice. If she ever says anything like that in front of Sarah," he added, "we walk out immediately. No visits, no calls, nothing until she apologizes. And no unsupervised time," I said, feeling my throat tighten. I'd always imagined dropping my kids off at grandma's for weekends, them coming back smelling like spices and fabric softener, full of stories. Now the idea of leaving my baby alone with this woman who'd looked at her with disgust made my skin crawl. Not until she earns that, he agreed. Until we know she won't explode. I thought about writing her a letter, something honest and raw, and maybe too long. I even drafted it in my notes app. How much she'd hurt me, how much I'd wanted her to be my daughter's grandma, how I understood her fear of losing her culture, but that she'd chosen the worst possible way to express it. In the end, I didn't send it. Not yet. She wasn't in a place to hear me. And I was still too raw to risk her throwing my words back in my face. So we waited. We fed the baby, we changed diapers, we took turns napping in 90-minute chunks. And we waited. The call came out of nowhere on a Tuesday afternoon when I was covered in spit up, and finally had managed to get Sarah down in her crib. My husband's phone buzzed. He checked the caller ID, frowned. "It's Ma." My stomach clenched. "Put it on speaker," I whispered. He did. "Hello?" Her voice sounded smaller than it had that day. "Beta? What is it, Mom?" His tone was wary but not hostile. "I want to come over," she said. "To talk. To see the baby." My heart started pounding. I walked to the hallway, where I could still hear, but not stare at the phone like it was an enemy. My husband didn't say yes right away. "Mom, after what happened?" "I know," she cut in. "I know. That's why I want to come. I want to apologize. To her." There was a beat. "To your wife." My breath caught. I pressed my back against the wall. "Is Dad making you do this?" my husband asked, skeptical. "No one is making me," she said, a hint of irritation slipping through. "I have been thinking. I overreacted. I said things I should not have said. I want to fix it." He glanced at me down the hall. His eyes asked, "Well? Under what conditions?" I mouthed. He cleared his throat. "If you come, Dad comes too. And Hannah. And you apologize to my wife without excuses. No yelling, no drama. We talk like adults. If you start again, I will ask you to leave." There was a long pause. "Okay," she said finally. "We will come this weekend, Saturday afternoon." He looked at me. I took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay," he echoed. "Saturday." After he hung up, the house felt charged, like before a thunderstorm. "Do you think she means it?" I asked. He shrugged, tension in every line of his body. "I don't know. But I know I'm not letting her talk to you like that again. And I know I want my daughter to have grandparents, if they can act right." We spent the next few days cleaning the house like we were staging it for a showing, even though his parents had seen it messy 100 times. There was something about this visit that felt like a test we needed to pass, even though she was the one who'd failed the first time. I kept rehearsing what I'd say in my head. I wanted to be calm, collected, articulate. I wanted to make her understand the depth of the hurt without begging for her approval. At the same time, a tiny, traitorous part of me hoped she'd walk in, see Sarah again, and just melt. Like the grandma I'd imagined in my head, hope and dread sat side by side in my chest as Saturday crawled closer. When the doorbell finally rang, my heart leapt into my throat. My husband opened the door. His dad and Hannah came in first, both wearing that tight, polite smile people use at funerals and awkward family gatherings. My mother-in-law followed, sari neatly draped, hair pulled back, a Tupperware of something in her hands, like a peace offering. She looked older than she had a month ago. Or maybe I was seeing her differently. "Namaste," she said softly. To me, she added, "Hello, Beta." I nodded, my mouth dry. "Hi." We all hovered awkwardly in the entryway until my husband gestured to the living room. "Let's sit." Sarah was in her bouncer, half dozing. My mother-in-law's eyes went straight to her, then darted away, like she was afraid of looking too long. No one spoke. You could hear the faint click of the ceiling fan. Finally, my mother-in-law cleared her throat. "I want to say something," she began, hands twisting in her lap. My husband sat next to me, close enough that our knees touched. His sister perched on the armchair, eyes flicking between us like she was watching a play she already knew the ending to. "I behaved very badly last time," my mother-in-law said, voice trembling. "I shouted. I said ugly things. I hurt you." She looked at me directly. "I am very sorry." I swallowed hard. "You called my daughter illegitimate," I said quietly. "You said she wasn't your son's." Her face crumpled. I know, and I hate myself for that. You are a good girl. You have never given me any reason to doubt you. You love my son. You love this baby." She glanced at Sarah, then back at me. In my heart, I know she is his. I knew even then. But my head was not right. It was a strange thing to hear, that she knew, even as she screamed the opposite. "Then why did you say it?" I asked, not unkindly, but needing to understand. She looked down at her hands, then at her son. "I felt cheated," she said, struggling for the word. "Not by you. By God, maybe. By life." She gestured vaguely at Sarah. "My whole life I have been waiting to see myself in my grandchildren. My nose, my color, my language. Something. When I saw her, so fair, with an American name, no puja, no rituals, I panicked. It felt like my culture was disappearing in front of me. Like everything I am would end with me. Her voice broke on that last sentence. Hannah reached over and squeezed her arm. My father-in-law looked away, jaw tight. I have watched you two, my mother-in-law continued. No temple, no Hindi, no Indian name. I told myself, it's okay. They are modern, times are changing. I swallowed it. But that day, when I saw her, it all came out the wrong way. I was not seeing her as a baby. I was seeing all my fears. She wiped at her eyes. That is no excuse. I am ashamed. I hurt you. I hurt my son. I insulted my own grandchild. I will never forgive myself for that. She looked at me again. I am begging you, Beta. Please forgive me if you can. Please let me be her dadi. Her apology was more than I'd expected, and less than I needed, all at once. I believed she regretted the outburst. I believed she wanted to be in Sarah's life. I also believed she had not fully grasped how deep the cut went. We talked about names and rituals next, because they were the surface things holding deeper issues. We didn't name her Sarah to erase you, I said. We did it because we live here, because people here hear his real name and immediately put him in a box. He didn't want that for her. My husband nodded. You know what it was like for me growing up, Mom. The jokes, the bullying, the job interviews where they lost my resume. I don't want my kid's first experience with her own name to be some white teacher making fun of it in homeroom. My mother-in-law sighed. I know you suffered. I was there, remember? I saw. That is why it hurts me double. I came here so you could have better life. Then they punished you for being who you are. She shook her head. I should have fought harder to keep you connected to home, to temple, to language. Instead, I let you become fully American. And now I see my granddaughter, and I think, where did we go? We're right here, my husband said quietly. I still love Indian food. I still listen to old Bollywood songs. I still call you on Diwali. It's not the same, she said. You don't believe in anything I believe. You don't do any of the things my parents did with me. And now she won't either. She looked at Sarah with something like desperation. I just wanted one thing that was ours. I understood that, weirdly. I wasn't Indian, but I got the fear of your culture thinning out with each generation until it's just curry once a month and a vague story about your great-grandparents were from somewhere over there. At the same time, I'd watched my husband flinch when strangers asked where he was really from. I'd held his hand when a cop followed us around a store for no reason. I'd seen his face when someone complimented his English. We're not rejecting your culture, I said slowly. We're trying to protect our daughter from racism you didn't choose for him. He nodded. If we lived somewhere else, maybe it would be different. But here? In this town? He shook his head. I don't want her to be the only brown-named kid in a class of Ashleys and Madisons, getting asked if she eats with her hands every day. My mother-in-law's eyes filled again. And I don't want her to grow up ashamed of who she is, hiding her name, hiding her gods, hiding her language. We sat in that tension for a while. His need to protect, her need to preserve. Both valid, both in conflict. I don't want her ashamed, my husband said finally. I want her safe enough to choose what she's proud of, not pushed into being a symbol for anyone, not your last hope for India, not my revenge on bullies, just Sarah. My mother-in-law took a deep breath. Okay, she said. Okay. Maybe I cannot have everything I wanted, but I still want something. I want her to know where she comes from, even if she doesn't have Indian first name, even if you don't do puja every day. I want to tell her stories, teach her some Hindi, take her to temples sometimes, show her our gods, our music, our festivals. Her eyes met mine. Not to force, just to show, so when she is older, she can decide. It was the most reasonable thing she'd said all day. When it was my turn to really speak, my hands were shaking. Thank you for apologizing, I said. I can see this is hard for you. I know you love your culture. I know you love your son. And I believe you love Sarah, even if you had a very strange way of showing it at first. A small, pained smile flickered across her face. But I need you to understand something, I continued. You didn't just hurt my feelings. You shattered my trust. You made me feel unsafe in my own home at my most vulnerable moment. You looked at my newborn and saw not a human, not your granddaughter, but an insult to your identity. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She didn't interrupt. I am willing to forgive, I said, but I can't forget. And forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to how they were. It means we set new rules so it doesn't happen again. She straightened a little, bracing herself. What rules? No more screaming, I said. Ever. Not at me, not at him, definitely not at Sarah. If you feel that angry, you leave. You go home. You call later. She nodded quickly. Yes. Yes, I promise. No more shouting. No more questioning her paternity, I added. Not to us, not to relatives, not in jokes, not in Hindi, not in English, not in code. If you ever say again that she's not his, that she might not be ours, that's it. We're done. She looked stricken. I would never. You already did, I said gently but firmly. That's why we're here. She closed her eyes for a second, then opened them. You are right. I am sorry. I will never say it again. I swear on everything. She gestured vaguely toward the ceiling. And, I said, feeling my throat close up, I'm not comfortable with you being alone with her. Not yet. Her face fell. You don't trust me. In that moment, no, I didn't, I said. You lost control. You said horrible things about a baby who couldn't defend herself. I need to see, over time, that was a one-time thing, that you can handle your emotions around her. When she's older, when we've had calm, consistent visits, we can talk about sleepovers, weekends, all of that. But right now, no unsupervised time. She looked like I'd slapped her. I dreamed of taking my granddaughter for weekends, of spoiling her, I know, I said, voice softening. I dreamed of that too. I wanted her to run to you with scraped knees. I wanted you to teach her your songs. I still want some of that, but I have to protect her first. Always. My husband put a hand on my knee. I agree with her, Mom. This scared me too. You went somewhere I didn't think you could go. I need to trust that if something sets you off, you won't take it out on my kid. My mother-in-law nodded slowly, wiping her cheeks. I understand, she said, voice thick. I don't like it. It hurts. But I understand. I will earn that trust again, if you let me. Hannah spoke up for the first time. Mom means it, she said. She's been a mess since that day. She hasn't stopped talking about how she ruined everything. It helped to hear that from someone else. A little. We ended up making a strange kind of deal that day. I want you in her life, I said. I do. I want her to know where half of her family comes from. I want her to eat your food, hear your stories, maybe learn some Hindi songs. When she's older, if things go well, I'm okay with you taking her to temple sometimes. Maybe one weekend a month you can have her, and you do all the Indian grandma stuff. My mother-in-law's eyes lit up, then dimmed as she remembered the rest. But that's a future plan, I said. Not a right, not a guarantee. Right now, that plan is on hold. You have to show us over time that you can be calm, respectful, and safe, that you won't undermine us or scare her. She nodded quickly. Yes, yes. I will do anything. I love you both. I love her. I don't want to lose you. My husband squeezed my hand. And we'll meet you halfway, he said. We'll talk about some kind of naming ceremony. Maybe not the full religious thing, but something where we acknowledge her Indian side. We'll think about Hindi classes when she's older. We're not closing the door on that. My mother-in-law sniffled. Thank you. That is all I wanted. A chance. We didn't mention the paternity test that day. It hung in the air, unspoken. In my head, I still held on to the Reddit advice. If we ever did it, it would be on our terms, with clear boundaries. But for now, we let it rest. Finally, after what felt like hours, my mother-in-law looked at the bouncer again. Can I? She asked, voice almost shy. Can I hold her? I looked at Sarah, then at my husband. My chest was tight, but I nodded. Yes, I said. But sit, and be gentle. She's still very little. My husband lifted Sarah and placed her carefully in his mother's arms, hovering like a hawk. Watching my mother-in-law hold Sarah for the second time was like watching a different person. Her hands were soft, tentative, cradling the baby's head like it was made of silk. She whispered something in Hindi, and her whole face softened in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. What is she saying? I asked my husband quietly. He listened for a moment, then translated in a low voice. She's saying, my little star, my moon, my heart, I am so sorry, little one. Dadi was stupid. Dadi was scared. You are mine, okay? You are mine. It was such a stark contrast to the last time. No accusations, no pointing, no shrieking. Just a woman talking to a baby in the language of her own childhood. Sarah blinked up at her, then yawned, her tiny mouth forming a perfect O. My mother-in-law laughed softly, a wet, shaky sound. Are, look at her, she murmured. Such a drama queen already, just like her father. We all laughed, the tension in the room loosening by a degree. Hannah took out her phone and snapped a picture. First proper photo of Dadi and Sarah, she said. No screaming this time. My father-in-law chuckled, then sobered. Never again, he said, glancing at his wife. She nodded solemnly. I watched them from the couch, my emotions a tangled mess. On one hand, seeing my daughter cradled in her grandmother's arms, hearing the soft stream of Hindi, felt right. It felt like a piece of the puzzle sliding into place. On the other hand, every time my mother-in-law shifted her grip, a flash of that first visit jolted through me. Her face twisted with anger, her voice sharp as knives. The word bastard in a language I didn't understand, but recognized in my husband's flinch. I realized then that rebuilding wasn't going to be a single conversation and a hug. It was going to be 1,000 tiny choices. Letting her hold Sarah. Letting myself sit in the same room. Letting time layer new memories over the old ones, without pretending the old ones never happened. As my mother-in-law rocked gently, singing something soft and lilting, my husband leaned over and whispered, You okay? I nodded, eyes prickling. I don't know, I whispered back, but I think I could be. The weeks that followed were slow. We didn't rush. We invited them over for short visits, an hour here, 2 hours there, always with at least one of us present. Sometimes my parents overlapped, a buffer of extra adults and extra love. My mother-in-law stuck to the script. No yelling, no snide comments. No side-eye at Sarah's pale skin or Western name. When relatives called while she was over, she proudly introduced Sarah as Mary Poti, my granddaughter without qualifiers. She brought food, of course. Enough curries and dals and parathas to fill our freezer. She insisted I sit while she washed dishes. She fussed over my healing, clucked at my husband to help more, then caught herself and apologized to me again for being a bad mother-in-law before. My father-in-law and Hannah were quietly wonderful. My father-in-law would sit on the floor and make silly faces at Sarah until she cooed. Hannah would walk me through the baby blues, share TikToks about postpartum hair loss, ask what pronouns I wanted people to use for Sarah when she was older. She also called her mother out gently when she drifted into martyr mode. "Ma, you're not the victim here," she'd say when my mother-in-law started in on, "I ruined everything. You apologized. They forgave you. Now show them you meant it." At night, my husband and I would debrief. We'd sit on the bed with a baby monitor humming, talking about everything from Hindi cartoons to whether we should let my mother-in-law do a small naming ceremony. "We could make it cultural, not religious," he mused. "No priests, no mantras, just a little gathering where we talk about where she comes from, light a candle, eat sweets. Call it a naming, but not a puja." I thought about it. "I'm okay with that," I said. "As long as no one tries to put vermilion on her head and bless her into a religion we're not raising her in." He smiled. "You'd look cute with a bindi, though." We also talked about language. He'd grown up with Hindi at home and English everywhere else, but he'd lost a lot over the years. "I want her to know some," he said. "Not to be fluent necessarily, but enough to understand songs, jokes, enough to talk to my relatives without you or me translating everything." I admitted I was nervous about her feeling between cultures. I've read stories from mixed-race kids who resent being raised white and then expected to magically connect with their heritage later, I said. "I don't want her to feel like we hid part of her from her," he sighed. "And I've read stories of kids who were the only brown or foreign-named kids in their class and got destroyed for it. There's no perfect answer." We kept coming back to the same idea. We wanted Sarah to have options, to know enough about her Indian side to claim it proudly if she wanted, but not so much pressure that she felt like a walking cultural project. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law was on her best behavior. She brought over children's books in Hindi and English. She sang old lullabies. She showed me how to massage Sarah's legs with oil before bath time, like my mother did for me. There were still moments. Once, when Sarah had a particularly rosy day, my mother-in-law said jokingly, "Today she looks a little more Indian. Yesterday she was full American." The room went quiet. She caught herself, face flushing. "I didn't mean," she started. I held up a hand. "Please don't talk about her that way," I said. "She's not a color chart." She nodded quickly. "You are right. I'm sorry." It became our pattern. She'd bump against a boundary. We'd call it out. She'd apologize. Slowly, the bumps got fewer. In the quiet moments, I'd scroll Reddit again, reading mixed-race adults talking about their childhoods. Some said things that made my stomach twist. My white mom never bothered to learn my dad's language. I feel like a visitor in my own culture. I resent being given a white name and raised in white spaces. I had to teach myself who I was. Others said the opposite. My parents gave me a super ethnic name and shoved me into every cultural event. I was bullied relentlessly, and now I have complicated feelings about my heritage. It seemed like no matter what parents did, someone got hurt. I thought about my husband, little and brown in a sea of white kids, his lunch mocked, his name mispronounced. How he'd wanted to blend in so badly, he'd started going by a nickname. How he still tensed slightly when someone asked, "So, where are you from?" I thought about my mother-in-law, uprooted from India, working 2 jobs, cooking Indian food every night so her kids wouldn't forget, only to watch them grow up on Pop-Tarts and Marvel movies, more comfortable in English than Hindi. I thought about myself, white and oblivious for too long, now holding a baby who would carry both histories in her tiny body, whether she wanted to or not. "Maybe the goal isn't to get it perfect," I said to my husband one night. Sarah was asleep on his chest, his brown hand covering most of her tiny back. "Maybe the goal is to be honest with her, to tell her why we made the choices we did, and to listen when she tells us how it feels." He nodded. "We can't protect her from everything. Racism's not going to disappear, because we named her Sarah instead of something Indian. But we can try to make sure she doesn't feel like she has to represent an entire country or hide half of herself." We agreed on a few things. We'd celebrate Diwali and Christmas, not because we believed in the religious parts, but because lights and gifts and family dinners are fun. We'd let my mother-in-law teach her some Hindi words. We'd show her Bollywood and Disney. We'd answer her questions honestly and admit when we screwed up. And we'd always put her safety and dignity above anyone's hurt feelings, including her grandmother's, including our own. By the time Sarah was 6 months old, we had something resembling a new normal. My mother-in-law came over once or twice a week, always texted first, always asked, "Is now a good time?" She'd bring mangoes or baby clothes or some new toy she'd seen on sale. She'd sit on the floor and stack blocks with Sarah, narrating in Hindi. Yalal hi, this is red. Yapila hi, this is yellow. Sometimes I'd catch her looking at Sarah with that same searching gaze from the first day, like she was hunting for evidence of herself. But instead of tensing, I'd watch her smile when she found it. A certain way Sarah scrunched her nose, the curve of her eyelashes. She has my mother's eyes, she'd say. Just like you, she'd tell my husband. Just like my Nana. My father-in-law became Sarah's favorite jungle gym. She'd tug his mustache, and he'd pretend to be offended. Hannah taught her to high-five. My own parents adored her in their own, less dramatic way. We still hadn't done the paternity test, and my mother-in-law never brought it up again. Whether she truly believed now, or had decided she'd rather have a granddaughter than be right, I wasn't sure. But the rumors quieted. Relatives who'd side-eyed us in group chats sent baby gifts and heart emojis. One evening, my mother-in-law brought up the naming ceremony again. No priest, she promised. No mantras, just family. We can light a lamp, put kumkum on her head if you allow, say some nice words, give her a little gold chain. It will make my heart happy. I looked at my husband. He shrugged, a tiny smile playing at his lips. We can do a secular version, he said. Call it a welcoming. No gods, just gratitude. So we did. In our backyard, with fairy lights and samosas, and my parents awkwardly trying to say namaste at the right moments. My mother-in-law held Sarah and whispered her full name, first, middle, last in Hindi and English, then added, and also, you are Saraswati in my heart, little goddess of wisdom. I didn't correct her. It was hers to feel, and ours to frame. We agreed that when Sarah turned 2 or 3, if everything stayed calm, we'd try a short solo visit at Grandma's. An afternoon at most. See how everyone did? The dream of one weekend a month at Dadi's was back on the horizon, but not guaranteed. And I meant it when I told my husband. One unhinged episode. One moment of her making our daughter feel like she's not enough, and we pull back. No drama, no screaming, just a firm, this isn't working for us, and a closed door. In the meantime, my mother-in-law started planning a baby naming do-over, a small get-together at her house when Sarah was older, with kids running around and Bollywood music playing. It felt less like a demand and more like a shared project this time. We were cautious, but we were also hopeful. Guarded peace with conditions attached. Sometimes I think back to that first day, and it still feels like a punch. I can see it like a clip from a movie, me shuffling in, exhausted and proud, holding this tiny person we'd made. My mother-in-law's eyes narrowing, her mouth twisting. The first scream, this is not my son's baby. In that moment, everything I thought I knew about my place in that family shattered. I wasn't Beta. I was the outsider who might have betrayed their bloodline. My baby wasn't Poti, she was a question mark. Now, when I walk into the same living room, I see a different scene. My mother-in-law on the rug, legs crossed, hair coming loose from her bun, singing Lakti Ki Kathi, while Sarah claps along half on the beat. My husband translating the silly lyrics for me, my father-in-law dozing in an armchair, Hannah filming the whole thing for Instagram. Both moments are true. Both live in my head. Forgiveness, I've learned, doesn't erase the first one. It just makes room for the second. I don't know how Sarah will feel about all of this when she's older. Maybe she'll roll her eyes at our compromises. Maybe she'll wish we'd gone harder on the Indian stuff. Maybe she'll wish we'd embraced it less. Maybe she'll be perfectly content being Sarah with a brown dad and a white mom and a confusingly intense grandma. What I do know is this. No culture, no grandparent, no tradition will ever outrank her safety and dignity in our home. If my mother-in-law wants a place in her life, she'll keep doing what she's doing now. Showing up with love, swallowing her pride when she bumps into a boundary, choosing being a grandma over being right. If she ever forgets that, we'll remind her. Gently if we can, firmly if we must. Because my daughter is not evidence. She is not a symbol. She is not anyone's last hope for anything. She is just Sarah. And anyone who wants the privilege of loving her will have to prove they deserve it.